Good morning, Senator Blunt. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning. Good to be with both of you. You know, the last time I was on, I offered to host Saturday Night Live if we did it as a team, but so far I haven't gotten that call. I thought the McGraw-Kelly team with me might possibly be what it took to push that over the edge, but hasn't happened yet.
Senator,
maybe I just offer the two of you. I may be the obstacle in that Saturday Night Live hosting invitation.
Senator, you know how long it takes to get legislation through. Just imagine how long it takes to get a host of Saturday Night Live through, okay?
Well, that's a very good point. If I'm frustrated with legislation, imagine how frustrated I could be with hosting Saturday Night Live. But the legislation has built up, and so we're looking at a couple of big weeks here that should have been spread over the entire year, but for whatever reason, we just can't seem to get the entire Senate, particularly the Harry Reid-led minority in the Senate, to want to do this work the way I think it ought to be done.
Let's first talk about the highway bill. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm optimistic about that. We're going to have, I believe, they filed last night that when I left the building, they were about to file a 5-year highway bill. There have been 37 short-term extensions of the highway bill since President Obama became president. The longest one was 2 years. You can't build roads and bridges 2 years at a time. And even when you do build them 2 years at a time, you pay a big premium. So, this is transportation's important to the country, but it's more important to where we live. Missouri, it's one of our huge advantages, but for it to be the kind of advantages it ought to be, you have to have a transportation system that works, and that means a highway system, a rail system, and increasingly the importance of a port system, an inland port system, as we see those real opportunities about to develop for us to sell things to people more often than we buy things from people.
There's also a story out there, Senator Blunt, that Obamacare might have some funding problems thanks to reconciliation. What are you hearing about that?
Well, Obamacare has some significant funding problems, and we are going to vote this week on a bill that would repeal all of Obamacare you could repeal under the budget rules with 51 votes. I think there's no question for people who've been watching this that Obamacare hasn't done what the president said it would do, and I'm sure he also hoped that it would do what it said it would do, but the numbers are just not there. The insurance companies are planning on the government to come in now and bail them out because they have charged, even though the rates have been higher than ever before, they apparently weren't high enough to cover all of the things that Obamacare says you have to cover, whether you need them or not. And so we'll be voting this week. I'll be on the floor talking about this as I did the year of implementation, as more and more families wrote into me every single day and said, here's the insurance we had that we could afford, that we liked. Here's the insurance available to us now that we can't afford and we don't want and we don't need. And so that number of people insured on the individual exchange, the people that used to have the biggest challenge getting insurance, is smaller than it was a year ago. And we just haven't seen the numbers added that the president promised would be added to families with coverage. I just saw yesterday the average deductible for health insurance is now $2,000, according to the administration. And, if you're a family and you're paying several $100s a month for insurance, and on top of that, you've got an average of $2,000 deductible, sometimes as high as $5,000, that's like not having insurance at all for most families.
So what do you tell the family in Missouri who is getting that federal subsidy to be on the exchange? Are they just going to lose out on that subsidy?
Well, most of those families have decided they can't afford to pay the part that they're being asked to pay. The estimate was that there'd be 20 million people on the federal exchange by the end of next year. They've now cut that in half and say, well, even though we got up as high as 14 million, next year we hope to have 10 million people insured. There have to be better ways to do this. Families need more options and better coverage. And certainly, the one The one thing that actually added people at no cost to taxpayers to insurance was just the simple change that I proposed, where you could stay on your family policy longer, up to 26. That put 3 million people, that covered 3 million people that weren't previously covered, and didn't cost taxpayers a penny. Those are the kinds of solutions that were out there that we talked about that the president wouldn't go for, and I just think the health care plan that the president proposed and Democrats passed without a single Republican vote isn't working, hasn't worked, and we need to look for new alternatives.
Senator Blunt, we're short on time, but you're on a tour of Missouri. Tell us about this Newhouse story.
Well, you know, I was at, on Veterans Day, closer to you, I was at the St. Patrick's Center for veterans that previously had been homeless. That was a great visit to have. Earlier, I guess early in the week last week, I was at the Newhouse Domestic Violence Shelter in Kansas City, and you know, hundreds of women benefit from that place of safety every year. Also, this time of year, I usually like to go to the food banks around the state, and was at one of the bigger ones, the Harvesters Food Bank in Kansas City as well. So it's easy to lose sight, I think, with so many things to be concerned about, of how many people are still out there doing everything they can to help other people. It is an important part of who we are, and somehow in sort of the frustration of how the government works and other things right now, I think it's easy to forget how many people are doing so many great things to help other people, not just at the holidays, but every single day of the year.
Senator Roy Blunt, we'll have to leave it there. A lot more on the table. That's why you come back often to join us and talk about the issues of the day. Senator Blunt, thanks for checking in.
Hey, look forward to talking to you soon.
7:12 here, Big 550 KTRS. Walter Knoll, ladies and gentlemen.